Right, I think we're all ready. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call to order this public hearing convened under Section 464 of the Local Government Act. And the business item of this hearing, the business item of this hearing is zoning bylaw number 580, 2022. This is a bylaw to replace District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25, 1987. I'd like to acknowledge this meeting is being hosted on the unceded traditional territory of the Sechelt Nation. In attendance this evening, we have all of council except Councillor Lamb. So we have Councillor Kuster, Councillor McLean, Councillor Rowe online, Councillor Toth is with us, Councillor Scott is not with us either this evening. And then we have numerous staff, as you can see, at both tables here to support us this evening. So all persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that is the subject of this hearing. If you have a written submission, please present it to the staff table, that's over here, and it will be included in the document file. And the file can be reviewed throughout the hearing and at the district office during normal business hours after the hearing is concluded. So this is a hybrid public hearing. So we have people in attendance here in person, and we also have people online via Zoom. So we'll do our best to manage the speakers list here in the community use room. If you've recorded your name on the speakers list as you entered, we'll ask you to come forward when your name is called and be seated at the table right here in front of us. If you're on Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand and staff will add you to the speakers list. You'll be asked at the time that you start speaking to start by stating your name and address. If you're attending the meeting via Zoom and experience technical difficulties when trying to raise your hand or speak, please email your written submission to planning@sechelt.ca prior to the adjournment of the public hearing. So that's planning@sechelt.ca. In the interest of time and comfort for those in attendance, we will be restricting your initial comments to 5 minutes. Should you wish to speak a second time, you'll be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaw has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. So this public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaw. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. If you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask you questions to clarify points that they may have that you've spoken to that haven't been clear to them. Council will not enter into a debate with anyone. The function of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. Next steps will include a report from staff to a future council meeting. Changes to regulations can be made at third reading. However, changes to land use or density will require either a second public hearing or a follow-up amendment to the new bylaw. So I'm now going to turn it over to Andrew Allen, a Director of Planning and Development, to provide an overview of Bylaw 580. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Seegers. And, oh, there we are. A moment, please. Okay. So as described, we are here for Zoning Bylaw 580. The intent of Zoning Bylaw 580 is to replace Zoning Bylaw 25. Zoning Bylaw 25 was adopted in 1987, and for a number of years now, staff and councils here have been working on an updated bylaw, and pleased to present a brief summary this evening. Okay, thank you. Slide 2. So, timeline. To start, even before the slide here, very briefly, the official community plan was adopted in 2011. And since 2012, there's been a variety of council terms. Each council has had a work plan item, a goal of achieving an update to zoning bylaw, or in 2012, it was referred to as an affordable housing bylaws, but we will infer that includes bylaws. zoning bylaws. So it's been underway for a number of years with various iterations and stops and starts. And it leads us to the current council priority plan, work plan, and strategic plan, which is to commit to land use regulatory reform, which includes an updated land use bylaw. So to that end, that strategic plan is 2019 to 2022. So in 2019, we created a project plan, a scope of work for how to complete this project, and that was presented to council in late 2019. And then we got to work for some months, balanced that with a variety of other ongoing projects. And in 2020, later in 2020, we had I recall there was a Zoom meeting with approximately 90 to 100 folks in attendance, and that followed by surveys. We had 5 concurrent surveys on different topics. And the short-term rental survey had upwards of 400 respondents, and agricultural land reserve use may have had close to 40 respondents at the lower end of our 5 surveys. And we went through APC consultation, we had stakeholder meetings, we met with the Seashell Downtown Business Association, with Chamber of Commerce, with a couple of community associations, and so forth, and kicked that off. And then following that, in early 2021, we reported to council on the summary of our pre-draft engagement, we called it. So what did we hear on our key topic areas? What was our plan moving forward based on initial feedback? So we spent 2021 into the early part of 2022 developing and drafting that bylaw. Around that same time, early this year, 2022, we also commenced working on short-term rental regulations. So there are some short-term rental regulations to be added to the bylaw, and I'll get into that a bit more, but that's primarily through the business license bylaw. But they are concurrent projects. And we presented our draft to council in April of this year, followed the next week in early May with first reading of zoning bylaw 580. First reading followed very closely with referrals. Referrals went through to community associations, local community groups ranging from aforementioned Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Business Association, Housing Action Table, so forth, as well as a variety of provincial ministries, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Foods, Agricultural Land Commission, Vancouver Coastal Health, and one of the key referrals, the statutory requirement, the one agency that we must consult with and seek approval of, which is the Ministry of Transportation. Any bylaw within 800 meters of a highway requires the ministry's approval. And so we've had regular communication with the ministry. We have received preliminary approval of this bylaw, and we'll be circling back with them once third reading is achieved. And so the referral period extended from May through till July. In that period, we also talked with individuals as well. We had Zoom meeting, in-person meeting, variety of emails with our referral groups. We offered that, or pardon me, meetings. We offered many meetings, had many meetings, attended Housing Action Table, Chamber of Commerce meetings, and so forth. And 2 concurrent weeks in July, we reported back to council, similar to our approach in April and May, where the first week was to report back a summary of the referral and this portion of the engagement, and the second part was to receive second reading in July of this year. And that brings us to now, public hearing, and as Mayor Seegers has indicated, next steps would be consideration of third reading and adoption of the bylaw as we move forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so it's important to give a highlight of the overview, a structure of the bylaw. So we have one bylaw, Bylaw 580, which is the adopting bylaw, which refers to the repeal of Bylaw 25. It refers to the content and the statutory requirements of the bylaw. And then we have Schedule A to Bylaw 580. Schedule A is the zoning bylaw in itself that we will use, that property owners, prospective purchasers, designers, and so forth will use. And so then that's broken down into parts. So we start with the zones. This is a departure from zoning bylaw 25, perhaps a more modern method. We recognize people, generally speaking, want to see what their zone is first. So we lead off with zones. We then go into general use regulations as part 2, followed by parking regulations as part 3, and followed by definitions. Definitions are, in a sense, an appendix to the regulations within the bylaw. And then, of course, maps. As it stands, when it's a paper document, we have 3 maps, which show the 3 areas of Seashelt. However, maps are primarily used on an online platform with a GIS, Geographic Information Systems platform, where it's a little more fluid and not subject to map pages. And some of the highlights, here we are, thank you. It's a reorganization of the zones. Bylaw 25 has a number of what are called CD zones, or comprehensive development zones, many of which have been amalgamated into other zones. So we have residential zones, residential multiple zones, a variety of other types of commercial, industrial, and so forth. The future slide will show that. And some of the key components of that are to letter and number them accordingly so they grow in sequency. So the higher the number, the higher the intensity of use. An R4 zone in the residential zone has a higher intensity of use and density than an R1 zone, for example. So we worked on that. Providing new opportunities for housing, for infill housing, particularly in R4, R5 zone, which will allow a duplex, which may have suites, potential laneway dwellings in the downtown area, and so forth. We initially proposed a 90 square meter size, or 989 square feet, for an accessory dwelling, and that was based on what was formerly the maximum suite size within a dwelling before a suite would become a duplex. The building code has changed, and it was realized that 90 itself didn't have real significance. We heard quite a bit through the referral and engagement period that people are looking for a little more room, and so we proposed that that be permissible to 120 square meters, and that was included through council endorsement in July. And then we've restructured a little bit our residential zones for increased density townhouses, condos. We have an RM1 zone, which stands for residential multiple, the C4 zone downtown, which will allow commercial and residential mixed use, each of which include what's called density bonusing provision, where the density or the amount of units can increase depending on the provision of on and off-site contributions of amenities, which are designed to benefit residents, new residents, existing residents, and so forth. And some of these zones, the RM zone, the RU zone for rural zones, we've cooperated the best we can with the Sunshine Coast Regional District, who's also working on a new bylaw to create some consistency. We hear this a lot from property owners, trying to understand what these codes mean and can we make them consistent. There's a lot of differences between Seasheld and, say, Half Moon Bay or Roberts Creek, pertaining to official community plans, pertaining to the availability of sewer and other means that can increase density. So while our zones are not identical, they are in some respects compatible and similar to understand. As noted earlier, is a new structure, making it easier to navigate with a consistent format, updating regulations, introducing a new M1 zone, a marine zone. It's a mixed-use zone in the East Porpoise Bay area, also as identified within the official community plan. And then a piece on regulatory fit. I just want to describe what a zoning bylaw is and how it interacts. A zoning bylaw is a land use bylaw. It's not subjective other than very few exceptions, such as density bonus. It's really quite objective, quite black and white. It doesn't create the policy or the vision statements that you'll see in the official community plan or the Seashell Vision Plan from 2007, but it does implement those, and it is compatible and implements other bylaws as well. So it's compatible with our subdivision bylaw, our development cost charge bylaw. Those are applicable when developing land, as is the zoning bylaw, of course. And as I mentioned, the business license bylaw, short-term rental, for example, will be referred to in both bylaws, but primarily regulated through the business bylaw, business license bylaw. We also have the sign bylaw, which regulates the size and appearance of signs, be it in residential areas or even in our downtown, as well as our bylaw enforcement notice bylaw. This is a bylaw that we use to enforce bylaws. Upon adoption of Bylaw 580 at one point, we'll have to make a very technical amendment to change reference to bylaw numbers, but the same enforcement provisions will continue to apply. And then there are also, it's not on the slide, but one more thing, development permit areas that are contained within the official community plan that can apply to housing developments. The zoning bylaw might simply say how big or how many units, but a development permit area can provide a little more detail on landscaping, building appearance, and so forth. So the zoning bylaw fits in with a number of our regulatory bylaws, but really its parent bylaw, if you will, is the official community plan. And that was our goal of this project, to bring this in alignment with our official community plan and take the next step forward in modernizing our zoning. Thank you. Almost finished here. So next steps, as I mentioned earlier, after tonight, we'll be compiling the correspondence. We're compiling all the correspondence as it comes in. We've received emails as recently as a few minutes ago, creating a package, an electronic package, which is on our webpage, our project page, creating a physical binder, and we'll go through that. And we'll look at that, where we've already creating a list of what can we change at third reading, what can we not change at third reading. As Mayor Seegers indicated, what is land use and what is density versus what is regulation, and how do we manage that, and what are our next steps forward? But we do plan on presenting to the next council meeting, September 21st, I believe, and it's likely that we'll be recommending third reading at that time. And so we'll be looking through and what are the minor changes we can make and so forth. And so like any new bylaw, for example, last night amendments were made to the business license bylaw or readings to a bylaw amendment for short-term rentals. And at that time, we committed to a 2-year monitoring program for short-term rentals. And I would suggest we'll be committing to an ongoing monitoring program for the zoning bylaw. We could commit to council to following up within a certain period of months with housekeeping changes, if we may, and carry on and see what does work and what needs a little more finessing. And so then there are 2 other pieces that I'd like to mention as we move other projects and other applications through and try and weave and coordinate all of these. There are 2 that are outstanding. The TELUS Living development on Inlet Avenue has received third reading of their application-specific rezoning. We've issued the development permit, or development permit is pending. The housing agreement is ready. It'll be coming to council next available meeting for adoption. So we'll be briefly adopting it into zoning bylaw 25, and before they'll even have a chance to apply for a building permit, we'll be moving it into bylaw 580. So bylaw 580 might require minor amendments really about addressing the massing and the parking within the C4 zone as it applies to that property. And this is just how we weave the changes together. Now, the other one is the short-term rental piece. And I'll say it one more time. The short-term rental is primarily regulated through the business license bylaw. We have an appended operator's guide. We have an internal policy document that's going to guide us as we move towards the use of business licenses and temporary use permits. There are some minor regulatory amendments to include into zoning bylaw 580 at third reading, respecting parking and so forth. Those were endorsed by council on June 15th. Council made some minor amendments to definitions that staff had proposed, and we have that ready to go. We could have added it at the bylaw at second reading, but we made the decision to wait until after last night's council meeting to ensure that council was ready to move forward with the regulation suite as proposed. And so again, we'll be weaving those changes in as you move towards third reading. And there is a note here about a parking review and downtown planning. And these are on the next steps, what's next. We've long noticed that the parking regulations for the District of Sechelt perhaps are quite strenuous for on-site use that can really stifle some good quality design endeavors. And these parking standards date back to the mid-1980s. We can invent new numbers, but we think it's more appropriate and more professional to do a proper study, perhaps with the support of a consulting engineer, to really look at downtown Sechelt specifically, our transit options, our growing walkability, human behavioral patterns, and so forth, to really identify what our off-street, on a property parking needs are. And it also folds into something that has been an outstanding council direction for more than 3 years now, to venture into a downtown plan. Now, a downtown plan would take into account height, design of buildings, take into account our servicing constraints, our transportation challenges, future grant opportunities, better partnership with the Downtown Business Association, the Chamber, the Seashell Nation, and so forth. And that will be the project that comes next. It does follow the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw would be in place. After downtown plan, we might be recommending further amendments, but that might be well into next council's term before we get there. And with that, I will conclude and pass back to you, Mayor Seegers. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we go to our speakers list, Council, do you have any questions for staff on anything that was presented tonight? No questions. All right. So we're now going to invite persons to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendment. I'll first call for submissions from those who've signed on to the speakers list, and you can see on the screen. No, you can't see on the screen. There is. You can now? Okay, so there's the list on the screen, so you can see where you are in order. So before you begin your comments to council, we ask that you be seated at the table in front here, turn on the microphone and state your name and address for the record. When you come to speak, again, you will have initially 5 minutes. The timer will count down, so you'll be able to see when your time is going to be up. For your second time around, it'll be a 3-minute time slot. So first up, we have Catherine Henson. Oh, sorry, Candace Sayer. Candace Sayer, your name's up top already. I thought you were there first, and then you disappeared. Staff are just quick. That's good.
Who's got the 8 timer?
Good evening.
Hello, Candace.
My name is Candace Sayer. I live at 6177 Oracle Road in West Seashell, and I'm here on behalf of the West Seashell Community Association. The association has submitted a written statement, but I would like to summarize some of the things that can't really be communicated in writing. The association has been very clear to me about how they view this bylaw, because West Seashell will be very affected with the change in zoning to R2 for many years to come, and they are concerned. They believe that this bylaw imposes density without infrastructure planning, that promotes commercialization by proliferating short-term rentals, encourages overdevelopment for the benefit of a few, and jeopardizes the nature of West Seashell as envisioned in the official community plan. This makes them very unhappy. They question why the district did not focus on updating the official community plan with concurrent zoning instead of purportedly implementing an outdated plan. They wonder why the short-term rental recommendations were not included earlier in this zoning bylaw to afford an opportunity to discuss them at length before this second reading, and they're concerned that the second reading will occur without this very controversial, at least for West Seashell residents, development, and hope very much that a second reading will occur after the council has an opportunity to address short-term rentals more fully. They question this hurried process that they perceive, and as you know, perception is often more important than reality for many people. And this is what they've communicated to me. They are concerned that what they perceive as concerns and questions remain unaddressed at this second reading, and as a result, they think and feel, and very strongly, that their views don't matter, that they haven't been listened to. And as taxpayers, they have not been respected. They're disillusioned, they're disappointed, they're frustrated, and some of them are angry. I know because I get their emails. So I thought you should know how people are feeling that can't be expressed in a written document. And West Sechelt is a very large area that is affected by future developments in this community. So thank you very much for the opportunity to let you know what I now know from our community. Thank you.
Okay, before you leave, I have a question. Sandy, I have a question for you. Thank you.
Sorry.
So you said that the questions and concerns have not been addressed, the community concerns are not been addressed at second reading. In your submission that you sent in, are those questions and concerns written down?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Any other questions? Sorry. Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Thank you. All right, so now we have Catherine Hansen.
Okay, good evening, one and all. I'm Catherine Hansen. I live at 6233 Oracle Road. I have submitted a written report as well, or my comments, and this is my verbal that I would like to bring forward this evening, and I'd like to thank you all for having this opportunity. This morning, I became aware of a staff report dated September 7th, 2022 on short-term rental bylaw amendments. I've heard Andrew speak about it. I've heard it justified that it didn't need to go into the second reading, but I feel that this staff report, on page 22, it states, given the amendments are regulatory and do not relate specifically to use and density and have been presented in the public, it is to go to third reading. Well, I would actually disagree with that because I have followed this short-term rental from the beginning. I will go through the council meetings or I go through their reports, and it has not, I don't believe that this has been presented to the public, and therefore it does need to have a second, it has to have a public hearing on that very element. I cannot see how you where you can justify that a short-term rental does not change land use or does not change density. Because that is what's going to happen in West Sechelt, is this densification will cause additional housing that will most likely be turned to short-term rentals. And this is going to have a great impact on our community, and it's going to change it's going to absolutely change the face of the community. And we don't want that. I don't want that. I didn't move to Sechelt. I didn't buy my property to have my neighborhood filled with people that are, where they're short-term rentals in small houses on the lot. So where I would like to go from there is to ask you, Mayor Seegers and the councillors and the planning staff, I would like to state that I think you made a mistake by pushing through Bylaw 580 without updating that OCP first. I think that without that OCP, that would be the guiding policy that from which a bylaw would flow, you were missing out on an opportunity to have a better product at the end. And I just think that we deserve more. We as taxpayers, we deserve more. And we deserve more from you. We want you to be listening to us. We want you to do the work in a really good fashion. And what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bylaw that is being tinkered with. And that's going to cost money, and it's just not going to be a good product. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Errol Williams.
Good evening to all. My name is Errol Williams. I live at 6368 Samron Road in West Sechelt. My approach to the bylaw was aimed at taking a piece of land specific that's within my community that isn't developed yet, that you've all had lots of discussions over the years, and see what implications your changes make to that specific property, which is an island in a residential zone, now classified as RM1, along with some various discrepancies actually within your bylaw. I think it needs another proof edit read to make sure the crisscross actually crisscrosses appropriately. I have 45 years of experience in the architectural field. I'm well acquainted with reading bylaws, building codes, all of it. I think your product should have been presented with opportunity to specific people by saying, is there a piece of land in your community that you're concerned about how this revision to the bylaw will affect you? And then let them say, yes, this piece of land at this address is currently zoned RM1. Can you tell me what changes have been made that's going to affect me? Because most people don't have the experience, the ability to actually read and compare bylaws. It's a very difficult thing for most people. So starting off, I took that piece of land, and with the new zoning to be RM1, the first thing that I noticed was that currently the maximum density on RM1 is maximum 50 units per hectare, which is 200 square meters per unit. It was previously townhouses, 250 per square meter. So you've allowed a developer an extra 20% development right off the bat before we get off the hop. You've also reduced front setbacks from 7.5 to 5. Again, more development area. You've reduced the rears from 7.5 to 5. Again, increased area for building. You've reduced side yards from 3 to 1.5, for apartments from 6 to 1.5. All of this is great, except for it has a huge impact on very expensive properties that I pay a great deal of tax for, and I paid the premium dollar when I bought it, understanding what I was looking at being developed, not this. Your maximum heights, I don't understand why you would increase from 10.5 to 11 meters. Again, we're talking about properties with views that they're going to be built in front of with some, what I can't determine to be a reason to increase heights. The maximum lot coverage is 75%. Bylaw 25 explained what maximum lot coverage was. It included driveways, roadways, and building areas. This bylaw doesn't define it that I could find. Now I'll stand corrected if someone can show me where it is, but I don't see it. The next comment, and this I applaud the people responsible for doing it, is calculation of height and grade. I'm sure, Danelda, because you got every letter I wrote, and I ended up losing a view for something that should have never happened. The guy built a plateau and then built his house on top of it. So now you've added that it's the lower of the average finished grade or average natural grade. Makes sense to me. If you want to build a hill, your building's only going to be this tall. You start where you start. You build according to grade. That's just common sense. So thank you. And that's not only applicable to residential, but to multi. But the question becomes, in this specific case, natural grade. That lot was regraded 10 years ago or whatever in the past. So there's the contour map that the city currently has before anybody touched that land and cleared it. Then there's the status with piles and land and built up that's there now. What is natural grade? Are we building from the grade that's there that's been modified? It says from the original grade, I believe. So there's a very good, big question, and it all revolves around grade further in your bylaw here. I gotta hurry.
Yeah, actually, your time is up. Sorry, I wasn't watching either. Your time is up. Can you come back?
I definitely will
And have
come
you
back.
submitted your information?
No, because I just did this morning, did the comparison.
Okay. Do you want to submit it before the end of the public hearing tonight?
I
Can you
can't.
submit it to staff?
No, I would want to type it. If you'll accept it tomorrow morning, I'll do it tomorrow
We
morning.
can't. Legally, we cannot.
Okay, I'll further go it. You guys are taking notes.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
yes,
thank
thank you.
Next up, we have Loon Forest.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Forrest. I live at 5678 Tillicum Bay Road in Tillicum Bay. I am reading a submission for the Tillicum Bay Neighborhood Association. The Tillicum Bay Neighborhood Association has reviewed the proposed zoning bylaw 580 in great detail. Over the course of the past year, various issues were sent via email to staff by our association and members, but responses received were poor or non-existent. Similar issues have also been identified by almost every District of Sechelt registered nonprofit neighborhood community association. I have read and agree with the excellent input on the district's website from D. Gregory Gepka and Judy Skogstad. The update to the current zoning bylaw is a huge undertaking. A common refrain from many has been, "What's the rush?" The artificial timeline for completion set by Council has resulted in numerous errors, unwanted changes, confusion, and more importantly, non-compliance with our official community plan and neighborhood special policies. According to the OCP, the following, if this is in page 109, the following policies are intended to supplement and be consistent with the overall OCP policies and map schedules. In the case of any discrepancy with the OCP, the neighborhood policies and land use plans prevail. Special policies for Sandy Hook, Tillicum Bay, Tewanek. With respect to residential development, infill residential development is supported within the areas designated on Schedule C as low-density residential, where such development can provide approved on-site individual sewage treatment. Housing types are limited to single-family residential, secondary suite, manufactured home, and duplex lots use on lots of at least 2,000 square meters, approximately 1/2 acre in size. Corresponding OCP amendments are required for many of the proposed zoning changes, without which the District of Sechelt could find themselves in unwanted difficulty and additional costs. Please review the applicable local government sections below. Local Government Section 4731. An official community plan must include statements and map designations for the area covered by the plan respecting the following. Section D, restrictions on the use of land that is subject to hazardous conditions or that is environmentally sensitive to development. Number 4, in developing an official community plan, the local government must consider any applicable guidelines under Section 582 Provincial Policy Guidelines. As a note, the former riparian areas regulation was amended on November 1st, 2019, and is now the Riparian Areas Protection Regulation. Also under local government, Section 478, number 2, all bylaws enacted or works undertaken by a council, board, or greater board, or by the trustees and of improvement district after the adoption of an official community plan must be consistent with the relevant plan. The rural residential zones RU1 and RU2 cover approximately 1,085 hectares, according to Committee of the Whole report on April 27th. However, the applicable number, size, and allowable uses are not in line with the remainder of the zones. The new system of description is supposed to be more rural with less density and usage for the smaller number. These two zones are reversed. with the RU2 having a larger subdivision requirement and less density. Careful reevaluation will be required to assure all new RU1 and RU2 zones are appropriate and consistent with the OCP. In addition, there are significant numbers of empty lots in the Tilikum Bay and Tewanek areas created prior to the District of Sechelt, which will become non-conforming and therefore unavailable for residential use. Check Local Government Section Division 14, non-conforming use and other continuations. This change effectively removes available housing stock, contrary to Council's stated wish to increase it. Sections in this zoning bylaw update could be changed with appropriate OCP amendments to allow these older empty lots and those currently with homes to be redesignated to allow permanent residential use. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, Shirley Kachuk. And is that how you say your last name? Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Kachuk, and I live at 5696 Tilikum Bay Road. I am reading from a submission on behalf of the Tilikum Bay Ratepayers, Neighborhood Association. In January of 2013, the adoption of two bylaws created the M3 zone and a new M3A zone on the floodplain. Amended the M3 zone and created a new zone, the M3A zone, on the floodplain of Grey Creek in Tilikum Bay, specifically for the business operation of Target Marine Hatcheries Limited. Target, also known as Northern Divine Aquaculture Limited. Bylaw 580 wipes out years of local neighborhood opposition against Target expanding to include industrial use on the Grey Creek alluvial fan. The opposition included court cases regarding waste management issues going back to 2009, which are still not addressed or resolved. And I have in my written report here an expansion of that, an explanation of that. The M3 and M3A zones were designed for a specific company operating in Tilikum Bay. This new zoning designation, M2, appears to propose a new district-wide category with an intent that will increase industrial activity on the floodplain. What is appropriate for one part of Sechelt is not necessarily appropriate in Tilikum Bay. For example, in Bylaw 580, there are no prohibitions regarding waste management and disposal to Sechelt Inlet and Grey Creek, or consideration of other potential environmental issues that the new aquaculture processing definition proposes. The proposed M2 zone is on the floodplain, the alluvial fan of Grey Creek. Using information from the 1993 Golder Report, there is specific information in the OCP regarding the higher hazard gray. In 2015, and using private funds, the Tewanek Ratepayers Association commissioned Golder Associates to conduct a senior-level engineering review of available information and reports on the watercourse and geotechnical hazards at and adjacent to the expansions at that time. The copy that we got here has a whereas section at the beginning, and whereas number 4 states, whereas Section 524 of the Local Government Act authorizes the District of Sechelt to enact a bylaw to establish requirements in relation to floodplain areas. Well, the floodplain section of Bylaw 25, old Bylaw 25, are not updated. They and the floodplain maps have all but disappeared. They have disappeared entirely, even though the OCP, page 26, states that floodplain maps and required setbacks for Grey Creek are contained in the zoning bylaw. The DOS has officially communicated to to Tilikum Bay residents that the Target Farm operation is protected under the Right to Farm Act. and the DOS will not enforce the noise bylaw complaint process. At the DOS suggestion, one resident has a pending complaint against Target filed with the BC Farm Review Board. It is an onerous process. I'm not sure if you understand that process, but so again, the official position of the DOS, and I've included in here an email from a staff, DOS staff, dated 2017, and I've included the file number and the email. They've communicated to Tillika Bay residents is that the M3 and M3A zones are protected by the Right to Farm Act. So it is our feeling, the Tillika Bay Neighborhood Association, that the DOS, the District of Sechelt, must review the 2015 Golder Report commissioned by the Toronto Ratepayers Association, specifically addresses the Great Creek floodplain uses, and consult further with the Tillika Bay and Tawanik before any consideration of changes to the existing M3, M3A zoning on the Great Creek alluvial fan is considered for adoption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ray Parfit.
Good evening. Ray Parfit, 4856 Laurel Avenue in Davis Bay. The new bylaw is certainly a vast improvement over Bylaw 25, which is pretty dated. I think there's still some revisions that should be considered before adoption. The current version appears to have replaced the former provision of accessory dwelling units with secondary suites in zones R1 to R4. And we saw the provision for short-term rentals in these particular zones. Bylaw 580 allows considerable potential for increased density in neighborhoods throughout the district, not just West Sechelt. And the following synopsis indicates the potential units that can be achieved with the combination of principal residence and accessory units. In the R1 zone, which includes Davis Bay, Selma Park, Wilson Creek, and West Sechelt, you can achieve 1 to 4 units per lot, depending on a parcel size. In the R2 zone, which is serviced by sewer in West Sechelt and West Porpoise Bay, you can allow 2 to 4 units in a parcel. R3, small lot, Cascade Green, Tyler Heights, 350 square meter minimum parcel size, allow up to 2 units per parcel, including the secondary suite. Downtown lanes that were referred to earlier can allow 3 to 4 units per parcel. And in the R5 zone, duplex townhouses and secondary suites, a maximum of 35 units per hectare. There's no indication of this includes secondary suites or not, so I don't believe it does. In summary, the extensive combination of principal units, accessory and detached units can result in quite an impact, I think, on neighborhood character, as well as through the increased density. A couple of questions. Are secondary suites, attached accessory units really appropriate throughout the district? If they are appropriate in duplexes or townhouses, what if a development includes strictly duplexes? Does each duplex include 1 or 2 secondary units? And this should be clarified, I think. Certain ambiguity in Bylaw 580 concerning secondary suites. The definition of a secondary suite is that it's self-contained dwelling unit located within a single unit. However, the regulations state that a secondary suite is permitted in single detached dwelling units or 2-unit dwelling. So what prevails? I think that this has to be clarified. I assume that site development issues such as parking, access, drainage, septic will be addressed in the building permit process with the accessory uses, with input, I would assume, from health and fire department. If accessory dwelling units and secondary units are a means of addressing affordable housing, should they not be secured by a housing agreement with the district? Just an observation. Andrew, I think, mentioned monitoring earlier on. I think the district could monitor permits through the GIS mapping and determine where accessory uses are being developed and if there's any problem areas that would result in some reconsideration of the regulation. My architect friend here was talking about the RM1 multifamily zone, including apartment townhouses and duplex uses. The density has changed to 50 units per hectare and FAR of 1.4 and lot coverage of 75%. I think this is more appropriate and consistent with conventional higher density standards. Open space provisions are kind of curious there, with 18 square meters per 2 bedrooms and 45 square meters per 3 bedrooms. This could result in a considerable amount of open space if an apartment contains 50 to 60 units. And when you add that in with site coverage and setbacks, I don't know how the hell it's going to work. Maximum height is 11 meters, and which is basically a 2-story structure. And it says additional density and height may be considered with a housing agreement or community amenities. Why not spell out a realistic height for apartments rather than looking at a prolonged negotiated settlement to allow higher heights than 11 meters? Powell River zoning bylaw sets a height of 19 meters in the multifamily zone. Squamish has a height of 15 meters in their multifamily zone. Neighborhood commercial, why not include a gas station or electric charging station in a neighborhood pub as permitted uses in a neighborhood commercial? I think that can help create a pretty good identity and a much needed use in a neighborhood commercial zone. Seniors housing, the OCP has very strong policies in support of seniors housing. States that assisted living community care facilities can be accommodated in high density residential zones and institutional zones. And the district will develop provisions in the zoning bylaw to calculate density parking standards associated with these facilities. I don't really see that, and I guess I just assumed that
Your time is up, Ray.
Oh, it is?
It is, yes.
Can I just finish my paragraph there?
Finish your paragraph.
Well,
And then,
well,
have you submitted this?
I just assumed that that type of use, seniors residential use, would be accommodated by CD zoning, not within the provisions of the existing bylaw.
Okay, have you submitted that in writing?
No, but I will, but I want to come back and finish what I'm saying.
Okay, so you can be added back to the list.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
How many more people you got to go before you come back?
Mayor Seegers, if I may, we have a number of people on Zoom as well, and we should ensure that we don't overlook that.
Yeah, there's somebody coming up with a little star in front of them, right? Is that correct? Right, good. Albert, I know your last name is it Edger? Egger, okay. Albert Egger, please come forward. He can't sit in that chair.
Eager to get there, but I think it ain't I'm not as bad as I look, so it's a matter of a number of things. First of all, I'm going to stand if that's okay.
Definitely, you can stand.
My name is Albert Eager, and we live at 713 Sullivan Road, Roberts Creek. My wife and I, Beth-Lynn Eager, have owned the properties, lot 1 and 2 on the north side of Great Creek since 1993. I've submitted a brief to the planning department regarding our request. The request is really simple. We would like to see silviculture use included in lots 1 and 2 on the north side of Great Creek. Now, let me give you some background to this, because in probably 10, 20, somewhere in that era, a large company, a liquor company from back in Quebec, bought what's called the Grey Creek Basin. The Grey Creek Basin is no more than about 1,500 feet wide, and the property they bought is about 4,000 feet long. So just imagine how small that delicate area is. We are squashed between Sandy Hook and the old Jackson logging site. The ravine is a continual area of environmental diversity from deer, bear, various kinds of wildlife, that sort of thing. So what I would like to see is that the silviculture use be returned to that area. And I'll give you the quick background. If you take a look at the pre-1987 zoning, when the SCRD was in control of that area had a zoning called R11, which permitted silvicultural use. Now, that changed with the amalgamation in 1987 to the current use, and basically since 1993, our family has used that as a very passive silvicultural area. We have no intention to develop it. It is not an area for development whatsoever. So quickly speaking then, what I would like to say is that we have historical precedent, 1987 and earlier, for it being a silvicultural use. And I am not quite clear on the issue of amalgamation and amendment, but I believe that there has never been an official amendment to change the zoning of those two lots from the old R11. Now, with the inclusion of RU1, which is the new bylaw, which we heartily endorse, I think we've come almost full circle to put that property back in its proper form as a reserve or a preserve. So my request then is outlined as you see, or you will see, on the brief that I have submitted previously, that we'd like to see lots 1 and 2 return to silviculture use. If hopefully this is a minor thing, which would be part of the larger bill. And if you look at this environmentally, we're seeking increased dwelling units, yes, for whom? For wildlife. We're seeking protection of the neighborhood. Those two factors, from an environmental viewpoint, will put those two lots in position to be considered as rewilding units, which is a topic sweeping the world, where we're taking lands which are not meant to be used for development and returning them to their natural environment. Now, I apologize for being a bit weak in my speaking. I'm not used to standing on my crutches. I guess that's the problem. But anyway, that's my intent, to ask for that request. And I still have a minute and a half, but I think I got my message across. And if anybody has any questions, I will try to stand up straighter a little bit the next time I'm up here. It won't be quite so shaky. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me, have you submitted your information in writing? We have that? Okay, thank you. We have that.
Yeah, I already submitted
Thank you.
yesterday, and I also give a copy here.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Next up is Jerry Patterson.
Mayor, council, staff. First of all, I would like to extend my
Okay, so
thanks.
first of all, your name and address, please.
Oh, sorry. First of all, my name is Jerry Patterson, 7077 Dale Road, West Sechelt. I would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to all the people that spoke prior to me for raising very relevant, valid points and ensuring that those points are on record with the District of Sechelt. I'm going to be speaking about something a bit different. I spoke to a number of your staff today regarding business licenses. And Bylaw 25 permitted that there could be 2 business licenses per lot. The new bylaw, 580, says that there can only be 1 business license per dwelling. Essentially, in most cases, cutting the number of business licenses that can be issued to a property in half. I spoke to staff today trying to receive some clarity on this, and I was advised by Ms. Tolson, she did research and responded to me,
that a business license is only an annual license. Therefore, a business license is not protected under legal non-conforming use under the provincial legislation. So therefore, when any person goes to renew their business license or licenses in January, if bylaw 580 should proceed, if under current bylaw, zoning bylaw 25, they have 2 or more business licenses on their property, they would only be permitted to renew one of those business licenses, therefore reducing their ability to operate their business, earn income, support, pay their mortgages, support the community. And the question that came up in discussions when this issue was brought to my attention was, what is the administrative reasoning or logic for why the District of Sechelt in Bylaw 580 would want to cut the number of permitted business licenses per lot or property by 50%? What is the motivation and intent to force people to close businesses or, in the alternate, run their business without a business license? One of the things that came up, some examples that were raised, is that, I'm going to use general terms, is that in one household, there's someone that's a consultant. They have a consulting business that they run from home. The other person in their household is a trades contractor and has business. So under Bylaw 580, come January, if Bylaw 580 passes, only one of them will be permitted to license their business. So what does the other person do? There's a couple that I'm aware of that came to my attention that have just recently are in the process of moving to the Sunshine Coast from another community on the Lower Mainland. They both work from home, have their separate businesses, do all their work online and by telephone, checked the bylaws, did all their due diligence, all was good. They made the decision to move here and are in the process of doing so, only to find out about this and going, uh-oh, which business is not going to be able to be licensed? And what are they going to do when they lose 50% of their income? How do they pay their mortgage? How do they live? So again, the question comes down to is, what is the administrative reasoning of the District of Sechelt with Bylaw 580 to cut the number of businesses that can be on a property or in a dwelling by 50%? What is the reasoning or logic to force people to close a business, to lose their income, lose their ability to pay their mortgage? What is the administrative reason for that? So I am speaking on behalf of myself and on others. We object strongly to the business license section of Bylaw 580 that cuts business licenses permitted on a residential property by 50% and will therefore force people to lose their source of income or move to a community that is more friendly to home-based businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Walter Tripp. And that will be followed by Richard, is it Pudister?
Good evening. My name is Walter Tripp. I live at 6672 Norwest Bay Road. I've been a taxpayer in the District of Sechelt since prior to it becoming a district municipality. So I think I got a pretty good history and a pretty good knowledge of what goes on. And I get the gist from what I'm hearing from people here and what I'm hearing from people in the community that Bylaw 580 basically is almost, and it's so sweeping, it's almost an attack on the official community plan. The density that you're creating and the amount of secondary housing you're allowing that will be short-term rentals. For this to come up as it is, as a bylaw change, rather than an amendment within the official community plan, you are not listening to what's going on in your own community. As a council, you owe it to us.
Excuse me. Please be civil and respectful.
Pardon me?
And please be civil and respectful and address the bylaw. This is not about council and our behavior or staff and the behavior. We're talking about the zoning bylaw. Please address the zoning bylaw.
The zoning bylaw simply does not conform to what the official community plan set out. Years ago, there was a tremendous amount of money that went into creating that official community plan. And to subvert from that, as much as you are doing with Bylaw 580, is wrong. This is strictly my opinion, but it is the opinion of many other people that I'm talking to in the community. And this is a public hearing, and it should be a public listening, because you have to listen to what the community is saying. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. Thank you very much. Now, Richard, and you'll have to say your last name.
You had it right the first time.
Okay.
Richard Puddester, 4424 Hazelnut Lane. I'm here concerning the properties between basically the Big Maples and Ward Court. Sure. Better? Right, these properties are presently residential and should remain residential for the following reasons. The Sunshine Coast is currently having a shortage of housing, and we should be zoning these properties to accommodate for more housing, not less. The proposed zoning for these properties are RU. I bought a residential property and have no interest in being zoned rural, as it would dramatically affect the value of my land and diminish the years of work that I spent developing, according to the current residential zoning. The zoning process is to bring in the bylaws to conform with the OCP, which is now outdated and requires rewriting at this point. At the time of the rewriting of the current OCPs, the properties were not developed and have since been developed according to current residential zoning. To change these properties to RU zoning will create many problems with these established neighborhood. The RU zoning makes no sense with these properties, as we cannot legally conform to the Code of Practice for Agricultural Environmental Management. According to the Code of Practice of Agricultural Management, is a minister's regulation under the Environmental Act that regulates the storage of manure, other agricultural byproducts and materials for these operations. The AEM code applies to all agricultural operations in British Columbia, from small hobby farms to large commercial operations. An agricultural operation would not be conducive in this neighborhood, and nor would it conform to the legal setbacks according to this code. Another point that we find necessary to include with these properties are on shallow wells, which any agricultural leaching or runoff would be of great concern to us. According to the Provincial Code of Practice for Agricultural Management, there is a 30-meter required setback from any drinking water sources. Most of the wells in this area are shallow wells, and we're only 1 hectare in size, so there is not enough room to have any of this type of activity without the possibility of destroying our wells and our properties. Excuse me for a minute. Basically, I'm just getting down to the point that these properties were zoned residential when we purchased them. We've developed them in accordance to all the bylaws and the OCP. The current OCP is well outdated now, and at the time of its writing, these properties were not developed. Now they are. To change them into rural makes absolutely no sense and would be very detrimental to the entire neighborhood. I hope you can reconsider. We're looking to get R1 zoning, which would make a whole lot more sense, and we conform much easier to R1 zoning. RU zoning does not work in this neighborhood whatsoever.
Thank you. And you have submitted, I believe?
We've submitted many emails
Yes.
in perspective to that. And
Okay. And you're going to submit that to the staff tonight?
I'll have some sent in tonight.
Okay, before the end of the public hearing?
I'm sorry?
Before the end of the public hearing?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Judy coming online via Zoom. Okay, and Judy, you can unmute yourself and please state your name and address, please. Judy, please unmute yourself. Okay, let's move her back to the bottom of the list and let's move on to the next one. We have Gaetan Royer, again online. Okay, Gaetan, you can unmute yourself and then state your name and address, please.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Gaetan Royer. I own a house and a home business at 5547 Trail Avenue, downtown Sechelt. I also serve as a director on the board of the Sechelt Chamber of Commerce. First, I would like to say that we really appreciate the hard work that's involved in updating such a huge document. Personally, I was an urban planner working for 3 municipalities and chief planner for Metro Vancouver, and my firm now works across BC. This will be one of the best zoning bylaws in BC in terms of its clarity, the way that it's organized, and how the industry is going to be able to hit the mark the first time, as opposed to searching for information throughout. A couple of months ago, I represented the Chamber to draft a joint report with the Downtown Sechelt Business Association, and a number of our recommendations were accepted. We thank you very much for that. Our review was done from a business community lens, but I would hasten to say that most business owners live and work here. Business owners have the community's interest at heart, and creating jobs and more compact housing is very much in the community's interest. A number of our suggestions are worth repeating, and I'd like to raise them now. First, the proposed reduction of the maximum height for residential zones. The maximum height today is 10.5 meters, similar to many communities across BC. The zoning bylaw proposes a reduction to 8.5 meters for many of the residential zones. Normally, changes to a zoning bylaw aim to prevent buildings that are out of character with the neighborhood. The height has been 10.5 meters for decades, so a new 10.5 meter home is going to match many of its neighbors. It should, by definition, fit the neighborhood's character. One gentleman earlier applauded your change of the calculation of grade, and I think this is great because perhaps only one person decided to cheat on the grade by filling a property, and that did result in a home being out of character with its neighbors. So you're closing that loophole, but the maximum height, the way that it's being reduced, is not closing a loophole. In the longer term, we need to subdivide acreage properties into smaller lots to build more compact housing. An extra floor on a small lot is going to make a huge difference. It will allow a secondary suite. It's going to allow somebody to have a mortgage helper. It will result in a more energy efficient home. It will reduce the amount of concrete to build the foundations of a home of the same size. So reducing the height is going to go the wrong way in many respects. And all I would ask is that you please adopt an amendment to retain the existing building height in all residential zones. I also recognize that you can no longer make changes to the density. So after the zoning bylaw is adopted, I'll come back and suggest that you drop the units per hectare in both zoning bylaw and OCP. I think that's an outdated way of measuring density, and it encourages the construction of larger homes, but I realize you can't change that now. The next area of concern is industrial land. There is very little industrial land in Sechelt. To create jobs and economic development, we have to use the few pieces of industrial land that are left more intensively. This is where the high-paying jobs will be created in the future. Industry is not like it used to be. Investors are looking for modern business parks where they can buy their own space, own a strata unit, and build office space over the warehouse. So the 3 paragraphs I recommend you change is 1.16.4, accessory uses should not be located in the rear yard only. Office space should be on top as a second or third floor, not in the rear yard. This clause can be modified to apply to shipping containers and garbage bins. And the next one is the maximum height, also 10.5 meters. That does not leave enough space for a second floor above a warehouse. So I would ask you to please increase that maximum height to at least 20 meters. And I will submit my comments in writing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mark Battersby. He's also online. So Mark, please unmute yourself and state your name and address. Mr. Battersby, you can unmute yourself on Zoom. I believe you do that depending on the computer you're on.
Can you hear?
There you
Hello,
are. Yes,
can you
thank
hear
you.
me?
We can hear you. Yes, name
Hi,
and address,
I'm Diana
please.
Davidson. Hello, I'm Diana Davidson, and Mark is with me. He had put, his machine just put his name in. He meant for me to be speaking. I will be speaking very briefly. Thank you all for being there and sitting through all this all night, and for all the
Your address, Diana?
Oh, it's
Diana, your address, please.
7521 Sechelt Inlet Road, and my name is Diana Davidson. We bought this property and have been using and living in it since May 1981. In the course of that time, for many years, we were very active in the community, and we were involved with the community plans. Just for your information, my concern is around the protection of the riparian, the aquifer of Graves Creek. That aquifer is likely to be an important part of our water system. So I'm interested in the protection of it, and would just point out that in the original community plan, that use as a hatchery was a non-conforming use, and it was not presented ever as being a permanent use. Now that we have such a horrible problem with water, and as the Edgars are being so marvelous about holding that property and rewilding it so that the floodplain of Gray's Creek, which is a relatively small area, can be protected, I would ask you to be very careful to ensure that nothing is permitted that would end us up with a nightmare that we don't have water and our main other aquifer, other than the big, huge one in Gibson's, which isn't ours, and by the way, it has been polluted by us. So please make sure that your changes do not give the future people a nightmare, because at the moment, this water situation is terrible, as you all know. There's no real solution, and we understand that there's been drilling beside Gray Creek, and a large aquifer has been discovered underneath. And that aquifer will be under the Eggers property, but it will also be under Target. So I ask you to consider that very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jesse Waldorf. And Jesse is online as well. All right, Jesse, please unmute yourself and state your name and address, please.
Hi, sorry. Jesse Waldorf, 5713 Sandy Hook. I just have concerns about the inclusion of garage space in suite space calculations. I haven't seen any adaptations or changes with regards to submissions that have been made via email with regards to this, but I think the current bylaw as it's put forward is going to cause a massive parking issue for all of Sechelt, and also impact people that want to build an accessory building that contains their garage and a reasonably sized suite that could actually be rented to a family. I don't think the inclusion of garage space in the living space calculation for those accessory buildings has any merit as it's written right now, and I think it's a ridiculous thing to expect people to build accessory dwellings in their backyards all throughout the densified downtown Sechelt and not allow for garages to be put underneath those suites. The street parking's at a premium enough as it is, doubling the population density downtown, and not allowing people to put a garage underneath is crazy. That's all I've got right now. Other than I'm against the changes to the R3 zoning of my personal property. In accordance with the bylaw, I think I should be able to maintain that. You're essentially taking an entire second dwelling away from all of the R3 lots that are being zoned away from that by the bylaw. It's massively damaging to property values and to the residents that planned on building two houses on those lots. I don't think council or the consultants that designed this plan have accounted for that. Thanks. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. And we'll go back to Judy. So Judy, you are up next to speak. You have been enabled, we can enable you to speak. We need you to unmute your microphone, and then you would state your name and address for the record. I'm not a, can somebody send her a request to ask her to unmute? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, so we don't have any other people on our speakers list. So those who would like to speak a second time, we'd like you to, can you come forward and put your name on the list and we'll get you up in order? Yeah, there's a list, we're starting a list for the second time around. So we have Errol Williams. Errol Williams, come forward, please. So again, state your name and address, and then you'll be given 3 minutes. You can come back again later if you like, once you've gone through.
Get my reading glasses ready.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking for the second time, my name is Errol Williams, 6368 Samron Road. I was talking about the island of not rezone, but now called RM1 in the off Samron, McCourt, and Jasper. On the allowable uses, a point I missed earlier, which is new to this program, anybody who's has an R1, and I appreciate we have a housing problem, but 1.6.4 allows 100% of residential units in the development meet the definition of rental housing. The density permitted is 100 units per hectare, which basically doubles the density on a piece of land that is in a R2 zone that you call now. Definitely there may be uses on, I don't know where, but I don't know, that promotes the developer to start thinking about rental housing, which we need, but it needs to be considered where you're putting it. Moving on, I would like you to address your grades and your definitions, your basement located below the first story, which is situated, no portion can be situated more than 2 meters above grade. But first story, your definition of grade in first story is referring to natural grade. But your first story really needs, in calculating building height, you need to use your finished grade, but you've got problems. What I'm trying to say is you need to review everything, including building height, in the same definition. So it's measured from average grade. And this is where I ran into a problem in ours, and it affected my property value extremely. So I would appreciate if you could go through all your grade definitions, how they're tied into the rest of the bylaw, and make the thing consistent and back and forth with each other. Sorry, I'm trying to beat 3 minutes here. Story first, above natural grade. I don't think you meant natural grade for first story. Was that intended? And when we get to grade, that particular land has been graded, as I said, 10 years ago. You have a clause by a land surveyor, but we really need to define the original grade, not something somebody did 10 years ago and now it has impact on all the houses that are there are behind it. And the last point I'd like to ask is cannabis. There is a process plant, we'll call it, using a residential dwelling, which won't meet 580 for smells, for all kinds of reasons. There's nobody living there. I think somebody stays part-time guarding it in a trailer. What is the intention? Will this regulation, presumably they have to get a business license for you, and if they're not meeting all their requirements, I assume you'll be shutting them down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you have, so you've given us all the comments. You're not going to submit those in writing?
I can't do that before the end of this meeting.
In your writing?
Oh, it's just scribbles.
Okay.
Mayor Seegers, if I may, we've taken some notes on those comments respecting grading. Can look into it.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Ray Parfit.
Round two, I guess. Try to talk faster this time around. I guess my next concern is agricultural zone. It seems that that's the most extensive part of the bylaw.
Sorry, Ray, name and address again, please.
Oh, I thought I already gave that. Ray Parfit, 4856 Laurel in Davis Bay. the agricultural zone provides for agriculture and protects the agricultural integrity of the lands within the ALR. It eliminates the Seashell Golf Course as a principal use in the new bylaw. It was formerly permitted in Bylaw 25 in the R2 zone. The OCP designates the golf course as parks and open space, not agriculture. The only permitted use in the agricultural one zone is agriculture. This makes the golf course a non-conforming use. And any change or enlargement to the clubhouse or restaurant or maintenance shop, driving range would require a variance. However, you can't vary density or use by a variance permit. So thus they're back to kind of rezoning or back into the catch-22 scenario because you're not going to rezone the agricultural land, I would imagine. The golf course was constructed in the late 1980s and early 90s when it was a permitted use in the agricultural land reserve. This is right across the province of BC. Golf courses were permitted uses in the ALR. The ALR policies changed in 1997 to prohibit new golf courses on ALR lands. However, existing golf courses could remain as permitted uses in the ALR. The Melora Golf Course in Richmond, Swanee Set and Pitt Meadows, Northlands and Surrey are examples. So we respectfully suggest that the agricultural zone be amended to allow the golf course as a principal use along with agriculture. Accessory uses to that principal use could include the clubhouse, the driving range, restaurant, the administrative office, and if there's any other issues to deal with, hiding, siting, deal with it at that time. But we really submit that the golf course should be a permitted use in that agricultural zone. And I don't think there's any issue with the ALR because of the grandfathering of the golf course. Short-term rentals, they're allowed throughout the district. The new Section 2.8 governs short-term rentals, allows the short-term rentals as a principal residence or an accessory dwelling on the same property. Short-term rentals in an accessory dwelling is permitted year-round, limited to 2 accessory dwellings if the operator lives in a unit. Thus, you can get 3 short-term rentals on a given property by the looks of it. The short-term rentals more than 2 accessory units requires a temporary permit. Thus, you can have more than 2 short-term rentals permitted. I think the short-term rental provisions appear excessively generous, and this has been raised with other speakers. Sunshine Coast Housing Needs Report had concerns about short-term rentals competing with long-term rental stock and the effects on short-term rentals on affordable housing.
Ray, your time is up again. Okay, do you want to sign up and come back again?
You get the message though. No, I'm fine.
And have you submitted that?
I will.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Albert. Mr. Hager, just if you want to stay where you are, we'll bring you a microphone. We're going to bring you a microphone. If you want to go sit down.
Put it right here, that's fine. Okay. Can I sit on this chair here? Is that okay? Yeah, I'm not used to talking with my sticks, and it really made me, I lost my oxygen level the last time. Anyway, okay, just put that down there. I think that's good enough. Hi, good afternoon again, or evening. My name is Albert Eager. I, with my wife, Lynn Eager, live at 713 Sullivan Road, Roberts Creek. We've owned the 2 lots, Lot 1 and 2, since 1993. What I want to do in my second presentation tonight is demonstrate to you, we have a jigsaw puzzle which you can help put together for the future. And when you look at Lot 1 and 2, it's part of a 10-lot system which spans from the north side, basically, of Grey Creek down to the marina. Now, where is Grey Creek? For those of you who don't know, it's 10 kilometers up towards Tewanek. Now, when you look at the physical aspects of that ravine, creek, and watershed, it stretches from our property, Lot 1 and 2, to, I think, a Class C park, and hence to where the water pump is for Grey Creek, and then hence up into the tributaries that come to Mount Richardson. So when you look at the big picture for the future, and I'm not talking about today and tomorrow, I'm talking about the next 100 years, I believe that creek bed should be part of a whole environmental system that goes from the estuary to the mountains. Now, how that comes together, I won't be here to tell you, but I believe we can set the thing in motion by today asking you to have a very simple request, rather, to have the lots designated silviculture so we can maintain it as we have done for 30 years. Now, having said that, if you look at the big picture of rewilding, it's a concept, particularly in the UK, where they're taking areas which have been probably misused, harvested, completely decimated, that sort of thing, and daily they're returning them back to some of the natural environment. So I am not seeking at this time the concept of rewilding as part of my presentation, but just asking for that silviculture be included in the designation so we can continue as a private corporation, a private family. We have 2 children who are well-versed to carry on our traditions. They're both, one is a marine biologist, the other is a vet, and they're both in accordance with what we are trying to do. They would like to see that continue for their generation as well. Now, the third thing I'd like to bring up is why not turn the property over to the BC Land Trust, that sort of thing. Well, we believe that we can control it more efficiently. We have better knowledge. We're here locally, and there's no administrative cost for doing so. So that is my request then, with giving you the big picture of the watershed and how that lot can be part of a long-term plan to see that whole area. The last of the watersheds that is on the lower part of the Sunshine Coast that has not been developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Lynn Forrest, and she's helping us rearrange the furniture.
Lynn Forrest, 5678 Tillicum Bay Road.
Actually, pull it down towards your mic.
Little
Yes, okay, perfect, thank you.
Lynn Forrest, 5678 Tillicum Bay Road in Tillicum Bay. I'd just like to add a bit more of an explanation that might help council discern the problem with the new RU1 and RU2 zones with an example. In Tillicum Bay, a majority of what were the R3 lots are now being zoned R1, the new R1, with according subdivision, etc. Now, there is one lot across the road from me. It's owned by a Mr. Brendan Swan at 7240 Seashell Inlet Road. He has 3 properties, one of which is approximately 7.47 acres. His property has been rezoned RU2. The RU2 zone, as written, has a minimum subdivision application of 100 hectares. It has a primary use of agriculture and residence. It only allows 1 residential dwelling, no matter how large the parcel. There's no rationale as to why that one formerly R3 property has been zoned RU2. It was looking at this and looking at the other properties on the north side of Naylor Road, which includes a majority of the Grey Creek floodplain and beyond, are now zoned the new RU2. The RU2 is allowing agriculture and residence, and it also includes as accessory uses, several uses, one of which is retail farm sales. And this is supposed to be the RU1. The name of the zone is rural residential. The OCP makes no mention or reference to agricultural uses within the special policies for Sandy Hook, Tillicum Bay, and Twarnock. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jesse Waldorf for a second time. I have two Jesse Waldorfs.
There we go. Sorry, I'm on my phone and also on my computer.
Okay.
Sorry, I felt like I was a little disjointed last time. Jesse Waldorf here at 5713 Sandy Hook Road. Just a second, what the last speaker was saying as well, and more specifically with regards to the rezoning of R3 properties throughout Seashelt to R1 or RU1, so that the public is aware. Some of us have done the math, and it's thousands of acres of land that is being de-densified by changing it from R3, which has smaller subdividable parcels, of which if you have 2,000 square meters or more, you would be allowed to build 2 houses on them. It's effectively, if things were subdivided, thousands of homes that won't get built on land that was zoned R3 and meant in the current OCP to be denser, and it's located in spots off prime major roads like Seashelt Inlet Road, not down in the depths of Sandy Hook, for instance, but yet at the top of Sandy Hook in the corner of Sandy Hook Road and Seashelt Inlet Road, where it kind of makes sense to have a slightly denser development. These R3 lots exist not just in Sandy Hook and in Tilikum Bay and in Tawanak, but also in Seashelt itself, off Wakefield Road, and a significant portion of Gale Avenue. Some of these people have had the opportunity to build their second dwelling already and will have a non-conforming existing second dwelling on an R1 lot now when this change happens. But a lot of us bought these lots with the intent to build a second home for our family, because everybody knows no one's going to be able to buy another lot here anytime soon. So you're crushing the dreams of people that were expecting to be able to build 2 dwellings, all the while changing the zoning bylaw to R1, limiting the amount of space that people can actually build, even if they can build an accessory suite. If they perhaps, again, want to build a garage with a suite on top that's large enough for their kids to move into or have a family in, I can't put a garage underneath, even though I've got over half an acre. Beyond that, I'll second again mentioning that all of these accessory dwellings that people are going to put in their backyards in downtown Seashelt, if you don't let them put parking underneath, every single alley in downtown Seashelt is going to be a parking disaster. So I think at the very least, you guys have to remove the counting of the garage square footage from the accessory suite, which only partially solves my problem because I still can't build an actual second house that my kids could move into to take care of me when I'm older, which was the plan for the lot that I bought. And just in closing, staff say that this is to bring the zoning bylaw into conformance with the OCP, but the OCP was written when my lot was subdivided, and my lot was subdivided many years, 6+ years after the OCP was done. So I'm just wondering when the mistake was made, reading the OCP then or the OCP now. Thanks, guys. I know I'm out of time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rick. He is online, and he's a first-time speaker. So, Rick, we will give you 5 minutes. And if you want to unmute yourself, please state your name and address.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Rick Luch. I'm at 5980 Seashell Inlet Road. And I've lived in Seashell since 2011, business owner in Seashell as well. And thanks for the undertaking of the update on the zoning bylaw. I had some comments about the LI1 zone, light industrial. And there is very little industrial land in Seashell. I think if we want to be able to create jobs and economic development in the long term, we have to be careful how we use these very few and rare industrial pieces of land that we have. Also, industry is not like it used to be. Investors, some like myself, look for modern business parks where they can buy their own space and their own strata units. To really modernize this part of the bylaw, I would ask for the following. If you reference and look at paragraph 1.16 6.4, accessory uses. They should be located in the rear yard only. Please delete that paragraph. Accessory uses include office. Office space should be on top as a second or third floor, not in the back. Accessories uses include restaurant as well. Surely we don't want this to be in the backyard. This paragraph might still apply to shipping containers and garbage bin, but it doesn't make sense to apply it to accessory uses. Paragraph 1.16.6, the maximum height issue is only currently at 10.5 meters. As I said, the land is precious. A modern warehouse has an 8-meter clear ceiling, which ends up being 9 meters above the trusses. So that doesn't leave enough space for a second floor at all. Please increase the maximum height to at least 20 meters. And finally, on 1.16.9C, the maximum percentage of floor that can be used for office. In a lot of the developments in Burnaby, Poco, elsewhere in Vancouver, all the successful business park these days allow for large office space use. That's the nature of business today. The people who want to buy units from me, one day maybe, would bring good jobs to Sechelt that would help every other business in town. So please change that to as much office space as the primary use. In summary, delete the paragraph about putting all accessory uses in the rear yard. Increase the maximum height to 20 meters and allow same amount of office space as industrial space. Thanks very much for your time and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. All right, we are looking for additional speakers. Anybody else who would like to come forward for a third time? First time, second time, third time? Welcome to come forward. Including those online who would like to speak. We have 31 people online. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and we will add you to the speakers list if you're online. So I start counting down. We are looking, I'll read this 3 times. And after the third time, we can no longer accept any submissions or any other information. I thought you were going to come up to the microphone. All right.
Can I come up and speak now?
Yes, you can.
Pam Jackson, 5667 Carmel Place in Tewanek. I have one question about extra units, because that's a new term now, units, on properties. And I'd like to know that if somebody wants to build a house and then they have room, they can build another house. And I'd like to know if there could be some kind of rule that those houses have to be used for permanent rental, not short-term rental. I don't care what else you do, maybe your family wants to move in or whatever, but not short-term, some sort of bylaw that says, I don't know the term, but they can't be used for short-term rental. Should not short-term rental right out of the ballpark right now, everywhere. And I know that there's something about parking in here, but I'm gonna state again that in Tewanek, you couldn't get an ambulance or a fire truck in the lower part of Tewanek along. They'd have to drive in and then back out. So that's my rant. I'd probably have lots more, but I don't have time.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Is there anybody else who'd like to come forward for a first, second, or third time?
I'd like to make one comment.
Come on down. And name and address again, please.
Errol Williams, 6368 Samaron Road. I've been thinking about the person that raised the business question and having 2 business licenses. And, you know, in lots of situations, one rule doesn't fit all. And it's almost like there needs to be a grandfathering of properties that have 2 business licenses today. It carries forth until that property is sold. And then at that point, it now must conform with the new bylaw. You know, same, as people said, they invested their future, their retirements and everything else based on certain facts. And this is a retirement community. And to take that ability to live the life they intended away just seems wrong. And I think it really needs to be addressed in a, you know, in a philosophical fashion and put it into the bylaw somehow. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Jesse Waldorf again, and then Ray Parfit wants to come forward. So Jesse Waldorf.
Thanks. Really short, and we can get on to the next guy. Jesse Waldorf, 5713 Sandy Hook. That idea that the gentleman just brought up is quite possibly the best idea I've heard all night. Make the zoning apply after a property is sold, because anybody who's got R3 now that had a dream of having a second house and extended family living in the one spot still has it. And if you moved here for it and you bought for it and you invested because of it, you've got what you came here for. And if you decide to leave later, you know, you're out of luck if you don't get it done. But I can't say enough what an absolute travesty the rezoning of the R3 is for myself and a number of people I've talked to that had dreams of having family living on a single lot, and the impact that that's going to have on myself and all the people that aren't paying attention right now and are going to be shocked when they go to apply for a building permit. Thanks.
Thank you. Ray Parfit.
Go through the address again? We're okay. 4056.
Actually, it's actually for the staff for records and stuff too, because they'll be looking at these after for notes, and they're going to have to, right? They'll be listening to it.
Well, I just have one quick concluding point, and it's, again, the short-term rentals. And the new policy requires a live-in owner if the short-term rental is year-round. And year-round short-term rental doesn't strike me as being short-term. But why not require a live-in owner for short-term rentals regardless of the duration of stay? Like, this has been like a major issue in the community.
Thank you. All right, we're looking for speakers.
Pam Jackson, 5667 Carmel Place, Tawanek. I just had one more question that a lot of people have been complaining about is the rush on this bylaw. I remember when the mayor got into I think it was an APC meeting and wanted to speak and wanted this taken care of before the election. I'm not sure why. I heard that, oh, well, we don't want to foist this on a new group of people. And I don't know why you're worried about that, because you were all, well, except for Mayor, you were all new. You had to learn. You had to work with things. So I really think you should just back off, step on the brakes, slow down, and give people more time to know what's going on. It's not fair. I mean, that little ad about this meeting in the paper, as usual, left-hand page, top left-hand corner, mixed in with a bunch of ads. A lot of people, all those people that were here last night with their signs, they thought it was last night because they didn't see that. So I don't know how other people feel, but I do know that a lot of people that I talk to are kind of irritated that this is being pushed through so quickly and so harshly. And I think that.
Thank you for your comment. Any other speakers? We have no one else on our speakers list. Jesse Waldorf has his hand up again. Jesse?
All right. Sorry to keep seconding people, but just a little bit further to that, I think that the planning process here has gone a little bit backwards. We have an OCP that is over 11 years out of date now, that should have been followed by a zoning bylaw update to match the OCP. What's happening now, as the last speaker was talking about, is we're adapting a zoning bylaw 11 years late to an OCP that's 11 years out of date and doesn't address the needs of the community, and especially doesn't address the housing crisis that we're in right now in this community, and then the state of Sechelt. I think it's a massive waste of time and effort to push this through when what we should be doing is starting from scratch. Somebody dropped the ball 11 years ago, and it's not the council that's here now, but we should have had a zoning bylaw within the next couple of years after the OCP, not 11 years later. We need a new OCP to adapt to what Sechelt has become now, to address the issues that we're facing now, and a bylaw shortly thereafter to conform to the OCP. But right now, this is just we're taking a 10-year step back, and that's all I've got to say about the process. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we have Mark Battersby. Right, Mark Battersby. You've been allowed to speak.
Hi.
Oh, this is Diana again, is that correct?
It's Diana Davidson, 7521 Sechelt Inlet Road. I've just been thinking about this licensing thing. I think perhaps it got muddled up with the, in consideration with the short-term rentals, but actually nowadays, many people work from home. Also, many people have a number of small businesses that they use to patch a living together with. So my suggestion is that just be something that has to be changed to allow, perhaps there could be half a dozen business licenses. A person maybe has a cleaning business, they have a babysitting business, their husband has a tree cutting business, whatever. Or there are people who now work from home, but these are not just retired people, but young people trying to make a living. So I think they should be able to have as many business licenses as they require in order to do that, without allowing that to get muddled up into the short-term rental question. Thank you. And again, thank you for staying up so late, you and all the visitors.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else who'd like to speak to this zoning bylaw? Anybody online who would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll add you to the speakers list. Yeah, submissions need to be in before we wrap this zoning bylaw. Once this public hearing is complete, we can no longer accept any information. So if you have a written submission, please submit it either, if you're here in person, to staff or online at planning@sechelt.ca. Yes? Errol, come on down.
Mine is a question. Errol Williams, 6368 Samaran Road. I'm getting faster at it. There's been a lot of really good comments. I appreciate everybody's work because I know what's involved in putting those kind of things and refining and trying to not trip over it. So that's all appreciated. How was the response to the questions, comments, hopes, desires? How do we know what comes out of that?
Do you want to address that, Mr. Allen? I mean, I think I know what your process is going to be, but I'll have you put that forward.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Seegers. Please do. Just going to turn my camera on momentarily here in a while. So the process from here is we review all of the submissions from tonight, written, verbal. We've all been taking notes to ensure we capture the essence of it as best as we can. We will write a staff report to council on expecting to be on September 21st, council. Be published on the preceding Friday on the agenda. We'll look at the comments, see what is an easy fix, see what else we can do, see what then fits into a category of use and density, and whether or not we want to, how we want to address that moving forward, as described earlier, second public hearing, follow-up amendment. So we can put them into different categories for council consideration, but we will review, summarize, categorize all the information we receive, and provide recommendations. It's not our place this evening to say what our recommendations might be, but it is our goal. This is our priority to get back in front of council on September 21st with next steps.
Does that answer your question?
So September 24th, first, the information would be available for anybody who attends that meeting?
Actually, it'd be the Friday before that.
Friday before that?
Yes. It'll be published.
Is it not possible to get the minutes of the meeting, or will there be minutes done?
The minutes will, the information will be in a report that's on that agenda.
Okay.
So it'll indicate the information.
Friday before
That's right.
on the website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
At the 16th. September 16th, yes. All right, Pam?
So I'm understanding that we could actually.
Pam Jackson.
Oh, sorry, Pam Jackson, 5667 Carmel Place, Tewanik. I'm under the understanding that we can still have another public hearing. Is that what a second hearing?
It will depend on the changes that are coming forward. So what Mr. Allen has said is they're going to look at all of the changes that have been requested, proposed, et cetera. And they're going to look at,
right?
yes,
Up to
and all of, I mean, there's a huge, you know, we got sent a big package today of
up
information.
till tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they will look at all of those and look at which ones can just be an easy fix and be put in the zoning bylaw, which ones would require massive changes to density and use that would require a public hearing. And they will come back with all of those various categories. That'll come back to the 21st. At that point, we determine which ones we'll move forward with now. Do we step back and do another public hearing with some more work? Do we not? Like, all of that will be a conversation that'll happen on the 21st.
So in essence, we could actually go into
We can do any of it.
So
and it's not been decided.
It's not just in stone that it has to be done by the election, because a lot of people want to know what's the rush.
We will take direction from staff, and then council will deliberate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to the bylaw on the floor this evening? All right, it looks like we have somebody coming forward. All right, so first, your name and address, and then as you're a first-time speaker, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Oh, I don't know if you need 5.
Okay.
Erica Titter.
Oh. Thank you.
Erica Titter, 6256 Oracle Road. We are, as I know, is Zone 3. And does that mean that with our little rancher that has a view, the people in Zone 2 across the street from us, they could potentially block our view? Like, there goes our property value. I've lived here since like 1980. I've seen Sechelt go through everything. So what is like the density? I mean, Silverstone to me is dense up top there. So is that the Old West Sechelt had a certain area for their lots and everything? So why not just grandfather that, leave it alone, go for the new developments, change that into these zones? But if you're buying up in, hypothetically, Silverstone, do you want chickens right next door to you, or a grow-up, or short-term rentals right there? Like, what is the atmosphere we're doing? My kids cannot afford a house here. We've lived here. We are longtime coast residents. It's sad. We need development, businesses to create jobs on the coast. I am almost, or eventually I'll look at retiring here. I need workers in the hospital. I need care. We need to bring people here, not annihilate them. And my kids would love to stay here, but they can't afford it. So we need like help, but in a good way, because I don't want to see my property value go down the tubes with like the new zoning and stuff. So that's all I have to say.
So what is your lot zone now?
Pardon me?
What is your lot zone now?
I have no idea how these zones are. I just found out that we are going to be in a 3, and across the street from us would be a zone 2. Like, so
Okay. We do have your address. We've captured that. Have we? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I just don't know.
So you have a question about what's going to happen across the street from you. Staff can respond to that.
Yeah, and like, could it would affect us, or even if we would build up our house, it would block our neighbor's view. And it was just the gentleman that was sitting here in front of me was my neighbor up top. So, yeah, you don't want to do that to anybody. So, and they bought so many years ago, and it was just, you know, a good 10, 15 years ago. So, I don't know what to do.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is June Sangster, and I live at 6367 Samron Road. And I was just going to add to that lady's comment there. We have a view, and that is exactly what has happened to us, because the property below us was apparently, I think it was a R4, and now it's going to be an RM1. And so, you know, is that going to impact our view? But no, it's that little patch of land that is below us. It's like a little piece of land amongst a bunch of houses, single-family dwellings. And, you know, we have written to the district of Sechelt before and voiced our concerns. Yet the development, there was a developer who came in and, you know, he had this grandiose ideas, but, you know, he was limited, I think at the time, to 10.5 meters in height. Now that's going to possibly change to 11. The zoning is changing. He's probably going to come forward and, you know, everything that was agreed on before has just gone out the window. And, you know, these new zoning bylaws are going to affect us again. So, you know, to her point, yeah, like, you know, we do need help from the city when things like that happen. You know, we all came here, bought a place, we retired here, and, you know, we don't want our property values to go down. And, yeah, you know, we just feel that our comments fall on deaf ears, you know, and it's not a good feeling, for sure.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this bylaw tonight? There are still a few people here who haven't spoken, who are hanging out. If you want to come forward and speak, we welcome you to come down. Yeah, there's a lot of people online as well who have not had their say. We welcome you to raise your hand and we can add you to the speakers list. And again, if you have a written submission, okay, we have Kevin. Kevin is online. He has his hand up. All right, Kevin Purton.
Can you hear me?
Please state your name and address. Yes, we can hear you.
5750 Tillicum Bay Road. So I was actually unprepared. I joined late and I was kind of unprepared to speak on anything. But I'd like to reiterate what a previous speaker referred to, and that is about the OCP being 11 years old. And it's my understanding from following municipal politics and business that it's typically standard to update an OCP every 5 years or so. So I just want to make a comment about you know, redesigning or reconfiguring the zoning bylaw without having an updated OCP. So that's my concern, is that we don't have a modernized OCP to work from, because that, in my understanding, should be an overarching document that allows the zoning bylaw to be constructed or take place. So that's just my short comment, is that I think the OCP should be a little more current than it is and work from that. Just my comment. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gaetan Royer. Okay, Gaetan.
Yeah, good evening. Gaetan Royer, 5547 Trail Avenue, Sechelt. I'd just like to share my concern with the amount of time that was invested by staff and council and the community groups in informing the zoning bylaw that's before you. Nothing is ever perfect. And I think there's a great deal of expectation by a lot of people who are perhaps not here tonight to express their opinion, but who are desperately awaiting this zoning bylaw update. So I would certainly encourage mayor and council and staff to stay the course, adopt the zoning bylaw. In the past year, during this term of council, you've amended both the OCP and the zoning bylaw, the old zoning bylaw, numerous times. And I would imagine that the new council will continue to do that. There's going to be circumstances that arise, new proposals that come up, and the bylaw is never going to be a perfect fit for every project. So I strongly encourage you to stay the course and carry on with the adoption of this zoning bylaw update, a long overdue document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this bylaw? If you're online and you would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speakers list. If you have a written submission, you'll need to submit that very soon because we're going to be wrapping this zoning bylaw public hearing up very shortly, and we cannot receive that after we've closed this meeting out. So I'm going to ask for a second time, is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this matter, this zoning bylaw? All right, and final time. This is your final opportunity. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this zoning bylaw? All right, hearing and seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll adjourn this public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding this proposed bylaw.